Well, alrighty then. That was a day of football. My name is Steve, and welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. It was not a great day of football. It was an interesting day, however. There weren't great matchups, and the day definitely started off slow for the first half of most of the games, and then it got interesting in the second half. Fantasy football wise, probably going to be a lower scoring week for most people. But it is what it is. We work with what we work with. I knew it was going to be a little bit of an odd week in some ways. Let's just start off another odd week, and that's going to be the Thanksgiving schedule week. And so I have made myself a little schedule for this week to get things moving ahead of the normal schedule. I will get my waiver wire video done tomorrow and out as soon as I can. Otherwise, if it's too late in the day, then I would just release it on Tuesday morning, but I'll have it done tomorrow either way. And then I'm going to do my rankings videos for Tuesday, and maybe I'll release like 2 in the afternoon on Tuesday and then 2 in the morning Wednesday, or all 4 throughout the day on Tuesday like I normally do on Wednesday. So that's the running back, wide receiver, quarterback, tight ends videos. I am going to do them all like I used to do them all. There will be no projections for those, and this is so that way I can get my projections and rankings then done, like my finalized rankings done and put up on the website by Wednesday night, so that way they're all available for you, so you don't have to go projection and ranking lists into those Thanksgiving games. So I'll do my best to get as close to what my rankings will look like by Sunday. Then I will also plan on going live 1 hour or maybe even just 45 minutes prior to kickoff on Thanksgiving. Kickoff is, I think, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to then put out a my normal Saturday start sit. However, that may possibly be stripped to give myself just some extra time to get some stuff done around the house, that kind of thing. If I do that, I will almost certainly not have like a news segment on there. And then also may skip over the injuries segment, since I would be doing things a day earlier, and Thursday injury report is, not as complete as the Friday injury report. But if you like those injury reports a lot, if you need them, rely on them, just let me know in this video or in one of my other videos, and I will do my best to either include that in that video or just do a quick injury-only video then on after Friday. Also, I do still plan on going live 1 hour before kickoff on Sunday. This is a full slate, I believe, this week. There should be no buys. So, now let's get on to the topic of today's video, which is a few quick things. I try to do my best to keep it to one quick thing and some of the main injuries, the main fantasy-relevant injuries that occurred. And let's just begin right here with the back and forth-ish affair between Atlanta and Chicago, where Atlanta beat Chicago 27-24, and as far as Atlanta goes, CPAT did end up out-carrying out Tyler Algier, and Huntley only had one attempt, so I think that is a good sign for CPAT going forward. I think it's just going to be a CPAT, Tyler Algier backfield. Unfortunately, Kyle Pitts had a knee injury this game. If that is anything serious, that's probably not good for this team in general. I think he helps to open up a lot of things, helps to keep that defense at least slightly honest. Unfortunately, Drake London's not been that guy this year. He should be, at least in the future, but they don't even target him enough for that this year to even have a chance of that working, so whatever. Then as far as Chicago goes, Justin Fields is a tired man. He was grabbing all of his muscles throughout the game, and not throughout the entirety of the game, but as the game went along. And then he also injured his shoulder, said that it felt really bad after the game. And so, like I said, shoulder injury. He did stay in the game after that injury and continued that drive. However, after the game, he was carted off. Now, if you saw this and you're like majorly concerned, this is a shoulder injury. I'm pretty sure that the cart was because this kid has ran for like over the last 3 weeks. I know he said that he was quite sore last week after the 2 weeks of running a lot, and he had like another 90 yards today. So I think his body is I think that was just a maintenance issue there as far as him getting carted off, and hopefully that shoulder's not a big thing, but something to keep in, on your radars. Then as far as Baltimore and Carolina goes, this was a close game. Baltimore beat Carolina 13-3. I think they went into half 3-3. It took a while for Baltimore to get to 10-3. It was not a pretty game. That Baltimore offense is struggling without Mandrews being at full health, without an excellent rushing attack, and without whatever his name is. But they may have found themselves somebody who could help to keep the defense honest in Demarcus Robinson this week. He went 9 for 9 for 128 yards, so obviously I think somebody to keep in mind for the waiver wires. Not going to go too crazy on that, but it's a pretty good stat line. Then as far as Carolina goes, Terrace Marshall was the favorite target of Baker Mayfield as well. I don't know that he's necessarily the favorite target for PJ Walker, but it looks like he'll continue to be an option in fantasy football. He did have 3 receptions for 76 yards at the end of the day, so that was good. I think by favorite target, that was maybe 7 targets. Otherwise, it was 6. They're a rushing first team. Now let's go on to Washington, who beat Houston 23-10. Just really never a game. Houston was pretty much out of this and scored late, and Dameon Pierce owners can be upset about that. Got a 1st and 3 late, and freaking, what's his quarterback's name, runs it in instead of giving it to Pierce a second time. He got the first down attempt at least. Let's just start off with Washington, and then we'll get back to Dameon Pierce. As far as Washington goes, Logan Thomas had his coming out party here for the second half of the season. Went 5 of 6 for 65 completions. So after a few weeks of silence after coming back, looks like he's back to good health. So that's good to see. That'll help this offense as a whole and give us a tight end to maybe replace Kyle Pitts. Then Curtis Samuel only had 1 reception on 2 targets. He did have a rushing touchdown, so his fantasy point stat line at the end of the day is not going to look too shabby, but I don't think that he's very reliable going forward, in my opinion. Then as far as Houston goes, once again, Nico Collins out-targeted Brandon Cooks. And something to keep in mind going forward, Brandon Cooks did have more yards in this game. Nico Collins can have the big plays too, though. So I said it last week. I think Nico is probably going to be the better guy to own for the rest of the season. So at least in full PPR. So we'll see. Then Dameon Pierce had a bad game this week. Very bad. It was bound to happen. I chirped about this a lot earlier in the season about how uncomfortable I was with him. I was uneasy with him this week, but he ended up coming through for so many darn weeks this season in one way or another that I let my guard down. I mean, we were starting him no matter what, and you're probably going forward, but this is very much like this could happen every single week. It's an unreliable offense, and he's somehow pulled it out of his butt in one way or another every single week, pretty much at least up until this week, and maybe that doesn't continue going forward. Losing this much can also hurt the mentality of players and lose their edge at this point in the season. So we'll see. Do be concerned, I would say, a little bit. Then as far as Philadelphia and Indianapolis goes, Philly pulled it out of their butts, 17-16, and scored with 6 seconds left, or maybe it's 56 seconds, under a minute, something like that, to give Indianapolis at the end of the game. Indy controlled the game. They obviously didn't have some sort of massive lead throughout, but the better team won. So, as I said, Philadelphia, they just struggled out of the gate. There's really not much to take away from this game. It just wasn't a good game for them. As far as Indianapolis goes, Alec Pierce actually had the most targets on the team, and that's not going to show up on the fantasy points stat line, but something to keep in the back of our minds. I don't know that it's enough to make him a stash. And Jonathan Taylor is back. That's going to help everybody. Then New England pulled it out of their butt, beating the New York Jets 10-3. Here's the one where the Jets had 6 seconds left or something, because with 12 seconds on a punt, New England ran that punt back to take this lead and win the game instead of going into overtime. Damian Harris out-efficiency'd Ramondre Stevenson on the ground today, so might return to a little bit closer to that early season split, which just might make Ramondre Stevenson not a smash play. But he did have 6 targets, 6 catches, 56 yards in the air. That helped offset that for even non-PPR to some extent. So I would say going forward, Ramondre Stevenson has more value in the full PPR than non-PPR. If that helps clear some things up as my expectations down the road for them. Then as far as the New York Jets, they just couldn't get anything going in. Nothing. They looked kind of like we expected them to look without Breece Hall. And so we'll see how that looks going forward. And just as prior to the break, Mims is having his little mini coming out party. He did lead the team with 6 targets. At least I'm pretty darn sure that's why I put that up there. I don't know why else I would without any more info, because what else am I supposed to think? So I'm pretty sure Mims, once again, I guess maybe I'll put him on the back of my waiver wire group if I remember to. Then New Orleans beat the Los Angeles Rams 27-20. And I called it. It was another one of them Taysom Hill games, except not quite. Didn't quite work out. He had the opportunities, just didn't come through. And I didn't watch the game on TV, but, I followed it. And so from what I could tell, there would have been, I don't know if it was necessarily a trick play, but one deep pass that he didn't connect on. And then there was one down in the red zone, fairly close to the end zone, that he also didn't connect on. I assume in the end zone was where the target was, or, within a yard of the end zone, something like that. So just didn't end up coming through. Did have a decent floor game for the tight end position, at least. It was okay. And just another player to not get too excited on if you're just looking at the fantasy points scored or hearing somebody else talk about it. Landry only had 4 targets in this game, so he had a touchdown on top of it. That helped a lot. I wouldn't go gaga over getting him onto your team, though. Then as far as the Rams goes, Akers actually led the backfield today, which works okay for me. I dropped Darrell Henderson finally. And Kyren Williams had the second most carries in the backfield, who I still have on my team. And I don't know that I would say Henderson's worthless. I just don't believe he was part of the game plan today. I don't know if we'll be able to predict when he'll be a part of the game plan going forward or not. But especially in leagues with thin waiver wires, especially at the running back position, I wouldn't just drop him for nothing. Then Tutu Atwell is another player. Let's not get too excited over this. He had 1 target, okay? Just 1 target. It was a reception, and it did go for 62 yards, and it did result in a touchdown. So that was great, but just 1 target. So I wouldn't be going and grabbing him off of the waiver wires. Also, in this game, Matt Stafford got a concussion, ? Something funky's going on with the Rams medical staff and how they handle concussions, I feel like. Because wasn't that earlier in the season that it's like Monday or Tuesday that Matt Stafford all of a sudden, he has a concussion when he took a hit during the game, I believe. And then he was, some people thought he might have had a concussion. He went out and I think got examined for one and then came back into the game, or he went out for a play, came back into the game, and then it was it's a delayed concussion. And so now today they're like, we're going to examine him for a concussion tomorrow. Every other team examines him during the game and comes up to a conclusion then. It's weird. It's weird. Won't be surprised if we hear of some sort of complaints at some point down the road, maybe even that were filed by other teams. I don't get it. Now let's look at the Detroit versus New York Giants game, and Detroit whomped on the Giants 31-18, and I believe this was a game where it wasn't even really that close until late. Swift came through with the touchdown today, so that helped a lot, but he was outcarried by Justin Jackson and, of course, Jamal Williams, who also had 3 touchdowns this game. Just another note, I've talked to, this should be, I think, the 3rd week in a row about that DST for Detroit. They've looked good ever since their bye week. And maybe one game before their bye week. The last 3 weeks, though, they've been looking pretty darn good. So I don't think they're a cakewalk, but it hasn't been opponents where we can guarantee that. So we'll see. Then the New York Giants, the guy we were going to be talking about, Wan'Dale Robinson, went 9-13, had 100 yards. That is coming out party, right? Unfortunately, he also had a knee injury. He was seen on crutches after the game, and then quote from probably the coach, or no, I think it's just like internal people said that they are fearing that it is a serious knee injury. I was hoping and thinking from watching the play that it was just a hyperextension, but they are fearing worse than that, so that's no bueno. Of course, hyperextensions can result in worse injuries, so maybe it's a hyperextension plus, and not the good kind of plus, like cool products you buy with a plus in it. I'm sure I could have sold that like it was a good joke, but it just wasn't anyways. Now on to, and I didn't plan it. Now on to Buffalo, who beat Cleveland 31-23, and Cleveland came out and knocked Buffalo back early on in this game, but then they got to 10 points and they said we can't do this anymore, and Buffalo just built and built and built a lead. Cleveland made a little bit of a war cry towards the end of the game, but it was not enough. They were outmatched in this game as far as Buffalo goes. Don't be fooled. James Cook did have 11 attempts for 86 yards, was really efficient on his attempts. A lot of that came on like 4 carries, all in like one drive where he had 5-6 carries, and the following drive it was back to Devin Singletary. So I don't think this is any kind of changing of the guard, but I mean it is also nice to see. This is probably the most work that James Cook has gotten. It was kind of once the game was put away, but not totally. Like I said, Devin Singletary did come out in the following drive, so it was just a he got that drive kind of thing. So there is some trust being built, and he took advantage of that opportunity. So James Cook value going forward has risen, but I wouldn't get too crazy over what it might mean going forward. Then as far as Cleveland goes, I don't think that David Njoku was at full health. So sorry for recommending him. Harrison Bryant out-targeted him, had 7 targets to Njoku's 3. So look for that to change next week, I would think. Now on to Dallas versus Minnesota into the afternoon games. Dallas whooped up on Minnesota, obviously, 40-3. They beat them 40-3. It sounds like I'm saying 42. 40 points to 3 points. And yeah, it was a pure domination on the ground from Dallas. This is the way that they've been winning games when they had Cooper Rush. They said that they were going to stick to that. They got a little bit away from it. They returned to it in this game. And obviously, they were able to. Minnesota wasn't able to score on them. That does have something to say about it. But I'll tell you, Mike McCarthy has a history of not relying on the run no matter what the game script is. So, good for owners of those running backs. Now on to Minnesota, and they threw in the towel with 10 minutes left, and this actually goes for the Dallas players too, and this will be something that we're going to start to see going forward as teams are feeling more and more comfortable with getting to the playoffs and not wanting guys to get injured at this point in the season. So they sat a lot of their talented players, so unfortunately some of those guys did not get an opportunity to have some late fantasy points to help make it a good day on that Minnesota offense. The Dallas guys pretty much had already done it. But at least they lived to not get injured and fight another day for your team. So that's the bright spot there. Now let's move on to Las Vegas, Denver, which went into overtime win. Las Vegas won with a touchdown 22-16 over Denver. As far as Las Vegas goes, they brought it today. I mean, as good as you can against one of the best defenses in the league, kind of wore them down and had a few big plays here and there, and they for a team that's been pretty up and down and more down than not, this probably feels pretty good for them. So hopefully something to look forward for those fantasy players going forward. Something to look forward to. Then Denver, Russell Wilson, just drop him. This was a great matchup. This should have done at least okay, did not do at least okay. So that's no bueno. Then also, Chase Edmonds looked like this was about to be his backfield. Took the first 2 rushes of the game, and unfortunately had an ankle injury. Took him out of the game. So that is not to be. We will see what that situation looks like. But if he is not there, then it's between Latavius Murray and Melvin Gordon. And I said it last week. It looks like Latavius might be the better back to own going forward. He had more carries, but even there's a bigger disparity in this game. 17 carries to 8 carries from Melvin Gordon. He had 4 targets. Melvin Gordon had 5 targets, even pretty close in the target department there. It's not a great offense to begin with, so neither one of them is going to be ranked super high ever. But I think that Latavius needs to start being ranked higher than Melvin Gordon going forward. And I might have ended up with Melvin Gordon one spot higher than Latavius this week. But he is... same with George Pickens was a guy. This was the last week that he was going to be ranked behind Deontay Johnson. Had them pretty darn close to each other. Wanted to make that jump, but needed to see it one more week. Same with this. So those are 2 things that are happening. And look at that. We're on to that game. So Cincinnati beat Pittsburgh 37-, oh God, I didn't write it down. 30? I think they got a touchdown late, and then they went for the onside kick. So I think it's 37-30. Cincinnati ended up relying on the pass heavily in this game, and it worked out for them nicely. Tyler Boyd did not have a good game, fantasy-wise, but he did have the second most targets on the team, which was 7 targets. So don't be too discouraged going forward from playing him. If you're in a tight spot and you need to play somebody, don't go making some sort of crazy move for somebody on the waiver wire. But, of course, this is in part reliant upon Ja'Marr Chase coming back. Ja'Marr Chase comes back. He's back to playing third fiddle, which actually he did pretty well with earlier on this season. So, either way, I mean, he's a fine play if you have to for a flex spot. Then Samaje Perine is going to be making waiver wires. Joe Mixon had a concussion this week, so Samaje Perine, next man up. He did excellent in this game. And yeah, he'll be that guy. So expect him to probably be useful next week. I didn't see the injury. I don't know how serious it is, but you never know how long it may or may not be. But most guys have not been coming back the week after they've had a concussion. And then as far as Pittsburgh goes, already talked about that. George Pickens one. He's Kenny Pickett's favorite target, I think. They have the best connection. Probably the best wide receiver on the team now. So I will be ranking him ahead of Deontay Johnson. As far as Kenny Pickett goes, finally got to see him actually play a little bit for the first time, I think, since his first game, and got to see some of the game late. So it was really good to see. He looks mature. I talked about it last week. It's hey, it looks like he's getting over that rookie hump. He's getting comfortable on the field. He's obviously, still a rookie this year, but he's getting comfortable, and I think fantasy-wise he's going to be able to start to finish some drives here. Did it today a little bit better. They scored 30 points this game. One of those touchdowns was late in a desperation comeback scenario where defenses play a little bit loose to make them eat clock, but still, I'm liking Kenny Pickett a little bit moving forward. Pat Freiermuth had 12 targets today, caught 8 of those targets, went for 79 yards, so that was great. I think George Pickens had the second most targets. And unfortunately, Jaylen Warren had a hamstring injury in this game, so that sucks. Okay, I'll be back soon with the waiver wire video, and I'll repeat this schedule, but here it is one more time. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon. Peace out.